listening to the Terrific Teacherpreneur, a podcast for teachers looking to grow a successful online business. Your host, Alex, was able to transform her Teachers Pay Teachers store from a small side hustle into a profitable full-time business. She now helps other teachers do the same. Listen along for actionable tips and helpful wisdom about business and marketing as a teacherpreneur. Here's your host, Alex.
Hello and welcome to the Terrific Teacherpreneur podcast. This is part 2. I'm continuing on from the last episode's topic. I was talking about the law of diminishing returns, and I really kind of dived into what that means. I was giving like real life examples, and I started breaking it down in terms of TPT. So if you haven't listened to the episode, listen to that first because it's going to make a lot more sense. But in part 2, I want to continue talking about this topic. And I'm really going to be diving in to the example of how to sort of navigate things if you're a really experienced veteran seller who's experiencing, like a decrease in sales is something we're really going to touch on in this part 2. Anyway, let's dive in. Continue on from my discussion last week. Now, just in general, talk about newer and smaller sellers. I really do think that the law of diminishing returns is probably going to hurt you the most if you are experiencing really slow growth in your early days compared to other smaller, newer sellers. You hear about people in your niche making more money a lot quicker. You're like, why am I stuck making like $50 a month when other people who've been selling this long and have similar amount of resources are making, $100 a month or $500, whatever. If you're like experiencing quite slow early growth, it could be a thing, like I said, where you're churning out too many products but not actually optimizing them. So you might need to pause the product creation. You may be sucked into the marketing. You're like in your early days, but you're spending all these hours and hours and hours on Instagram and TikTok and Pinterest and whatever. I saw a Facebook post today where someone said, I have Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, TikTok, and you're listing like 1,000 different marketing platforms. I was like, oh my goodness, just stop. Just like pick one because you're spreading yourself so thin. You cannot physically have success all 4 of those right now. So pick 1 or 2. But anyway, just in general, like, are you wasting all your time marketing? That's not going to push you out of that $50 a month situation. So that could be something. Now, for more seasoned, bigger sellers listening, if you're experiencing a plateau or a decline, you do need to change what you're doing. I do resonate with this phrase. I've said it before. The whole like insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results. So doing the same thing over and over and over again, but being like, why am I not seeing any change? Everyone is different. So this will differ for you, but maybe you're spending too much or too little time or money on certain areas. And so we've got the big 3 in the TPT space: product creation, product optimization of your listings, and marketing. Those are your 3 big areas. And where are you spending too much time and too little time? I can pretty much guarantee that nearly every one of you listening, we're all guilty of this, spending too little time optimizing. That's something we should be doing. Are you spending too much time churning out products and not optimizing? Maybe. Or maybe you haven't made products in quite a while and you need to get back into that. Maybe you're spending too much time marketing. Your entire work week is filled up with blog posts and TikTok videos and email writing, and you can't remember the last time you made a product, or you can't remember the last time you really actually optimized your thumbnails and previews or whatever. So have a little think. Where are you spending your time poorly? We are all guilty of it. And you could be spending a lot of time on something that isn't bringing you money. So you're like, I can't understand why I'm not seeing the growth anymore that I want to see. But it's like, well, in your early days, you were creating all these great quality products. You were working on your store and your listings. And now all you do is post Instagram reels. And they're not probably hugely profitable for you. And so, or you might make some money, but probably not enough. And so are you spending your time really poorly in the wrong areas, basically? Something to, keep in mind. So yeah, for seasoned sellers, especially if you're experiencing like a plateau, doing more of the same thing. That 3rd glass of water, that strawberry fertilizer example, you're churning out another product or wasting hours on marketing platforms that aren't driving traffic or sales, letting your listings just stagnate without optimizing them. You probably have hundreds of products in your store. What you created in 2018 in terms of your listings ain't going to fly now. Like what worked years ago does not work now. Your rectangular covers and your screenshots and not having previews or whatever you were doing. There's probably a lot of stuff in your store that needs optimizing. And I think that's just like, we're all guilty of it, but like that's just like the biggest thing. You know what I mean? You join another marketing platform because you feel like that's something you can control. But ironically, you actually can't control these marketing platforms that you're just like renting space on. But the best thing you could be doing is getting your store up to scratch, because I feel like, I know people listening might be thinking like, I make my bestsellers look good, or, my store is pretty great, whatever. But let's be real. I don't think there's a single seller out there that has every single resource in their store optimized, because we just physically can't, because we don't have 10 resources. We all have hundreds, and we don't have 100 arms that can all work at loads of different computers. We physically can't maintain them all and keep them all amazing. And I think we tend to get overwhelmed at the thought of it. So we just don't even bother. And we just like, okay, what can I do instead? I'll go and start a Pinterest account or whatever. But I mean, yeah, being honest with yourself and being like, oh, I don't understand why my sales are plateauing. I don't understand why my sales are declining. But how old are some of these resources? How outdated are some of these listings? How much are you expecting to earn the same revenue for something that you created 10 years ago? Or how much are you expecting to earn the same revenue on something that hasn't been optimized in 5 years, or is outdated or whatever? Like, you can't expect that same level of growth for something that is super old, outdated, or not optimized. As the years go on, it takes like a wear and tear almost on our listings. And I found that with bestsellers. Bestsellers change over time. And for something that was making me quite a lot of money 5 years ago isn't making me much now. And I look at it and I'm like, well, yeah, things have changed in teaching. That kind of resource is not as popular anymore. Or, oh my goodness, look at that hideous cover. Like, duh, no wonder it's not selling anymore. I think we have to be realistic about trying to expect extremely long-term success from products, especially if you aren't willing to really work on them. They can't perform amazingly for you forever. It doesn't really work like that. So I think with in terms of, if you've not been creating products in a long time, you've got really caught up in the marketing thing, you're expecting your bestsellers that you created many years ago to just serve you forever and ever and ever. It doesn't really work like that. Bestsellers change. I'm a big fan of saying that. I think that's really true. And so you have to kind of sometimes create new bestsellers. Like, you've got to create new products to figure out what new thing can kind of take over. But anyway, now I will obviously say external factors are involved. That's not going to say that a decline in sales is all because you didn't optimize your old resources. Like, of course, AI, newer sellers joining TPT in droves, like the economy, TPT search changes. There's so many things going on that are going to impact our sales if we've been selling a while. I'm not going to pretend those things don't exist. Of course they affect us. But, although these things are out of our control, they do affect your situation. But how you react matters, and I think if you've reached a peak, like, that's fine. I think it's like understandable that you might not experience huge continuous growth like forever and ever. There is a ceiling to growth, based on your talents, based on your abilities, based on your team, the market, all of those things, like, the economy and stuff. Like, it's okay to experience a little bit of a plateau, or to get to kind of a peak where, like, this is probably the most I'm ever really going to earn on TPT. Maybe I'm not going to be a millionaire or whatever. That's fine. You only really want to be worrying about an actual decline. Like, so basically, if you've been selling a few years, maybe like 2019, 2020 was like your big peak, you would earn this crazy amount of money, and you've just never really been able to surpass that. Like, I mean, obviously there's things you can do, but I sometimes think it's okay to just say, hey, well, maybe that's the limit of what I can achieve in terms of the time I have. Maybe you're a full-time teacher, or you've got a family, or whatever. Maybe in terms of what you can afford, like, you can't afford to hire a big team, or you've hit your limit on how many people you can have in your team. Like, there's definitely a limit to what you can achieve, and everyone's different in terms of the time you have, the money you have. And I think it's okay for your business to hit a plateau. I don't actually think that's the end of the world for you to say, hey, well, this is my ceiling, this is my limit, this is kind of my earnings potential. I don't think that's the worst thing either. I think if you're experiencing a little bit of a plateau, stop thinking of it as a plateau, think more of it as just like a peak. Hey, well, I think this is kind of my limit for now. Maybe you'll go slightly up, slightly down, but you've kind of put all your resources and all your energy in, and you aren't in a position to change any variables, which the law of diminishing return requires. You don't have more money to put in, or you don't have more time to put in, or like, well, that's okay. That's just how the economic principle works. I know there are people that have, $1 million a year TPT businesses and stuff. They kind of avoid this because they keep changing the variables. And so maybe they've got lots of money coming in. They keep hiring new team members. They keep starting new things. They keep, growing basically and scaling. And some people have the time and the ability and the bandwidth to do that. Other people don't. You could be a full-time teacher and you have 3 kids and a dog and an elderly sick parent, and you only have, a max of like 6-7 hours a week you can work on TPT, and your expenses just are where they are. Like, you can have a team member. That's all you can afford. Like, that's where you're at right now. And yeah, for someone else who's making $1 million a year, like, well, they've got this team of 10 people, and they've got 30, 40 hours a week. They're full-time TPT and like they're in a completely different situation to you. So yeah, they can grow and scale their business and you might be hitting a little bit of a peak based on the fact your situation is what it is. You can't change those variables right now. And like, that's okay to accept. I don't think it's the end of the world to hit a plateau. A decline is different. Obviously, a decline is not so great. But this could be where time is spent poorly. So most of your money, or majority of your money, comes from a small number of resources. That's true for everyone. 80-20 rule, Pareto principle. We all know 80% of your income is coming from about 20% of your resources, your best sellers, your higher earners. And so when you are kind of going like, oh, my sales are down, like as a whole, you're like looking at the whole month or the whole year, I'm down by 30%. Like, well, that's good and all, but that doesn't mean anything. You need to look at where your actually money is coming from and where it's gone, basically. It's like, oh, I used to earn $10,000 a month, but now I only earn $6,000. It's like, well, stop focusing on the big overall big picture. Be like, okay, specifically, where has that drop come from? Oh, well, I used to earn, $2,000 a month from this one best-selling product. And now that's down to only a couple hundred a month. Like, that was the product was bringing a lot of money for you, a huge amount of money. So you start looking at your resources. Are they old? Are they outdated? Are they irrelevant? Is there too much competition now in that particular niche or product type or topic area? You were making phonics worksheets 10 years ago. Nobody else was really making them now. There's a million of them. So stop analyzing your overall sales decreases and look specifically at what has decreased. Is it a bestseller? If so, why? Could it be optimized? Have you been lazy with it in terms of like, when was the last time you actually updated the cover, looked at the data, did the preview, blah, 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 or like looked at the SEO, that kind of thing? In terms of marketing, are you spending time marketing new resources, worse sellers, random resources, seasonal resources, when really you should probably be putting all your marketing time into your bestsellers, the ones convert really well. So even though it feels like you're a broken record, it doesn't matter. Just keep talking about your bestsellers in terms of marketing, whether it's organic or paid ads. You could be wasting your marketing time on resources that aren't even revenue generating. You're like, I just released this new resource. I really want to talk about it. That's great. But let's be real. If you talk about your bestseller on Instagram every week, that's probably the thing that's going to actually bring money because the listing itself's going to convert, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, as I mentioned earlier, are you relying on bestsellers that are many, many years old? Do you need to create new ones, basically? You basically haven't been creating products in a long time. Maybe you need to create new products and you might eventually find some new bestsellers. This is for if you haven't been creating in a while. Bestsellers change. It's really, really hard to have one product be just continuously making money for you for like over 10 years. Like, I just think it's always going to change. So what teachers want and need changes. So you might have to try new things, make new products, find new bestsellers. That's a reality there. But my biggest overall takeaway, if you're a super veteran seller who's had a really big decrease in sales, of course, a lot of stuff's out of your control, like the economy and stuff, but there are things within your control. I think it's naive to say that there's like literally nothing you can do, because you could, just stop working on TPT and give up, throw in the towel. That's not going to get you anywhere. Or waste all your time on, TikTok or whatever. Or you could be going in and optimizing your resources and making them, like improving the data, making them sell even more, creating new ones, that kind of thing. I know I've been a little bit harsh here. I know this, like I said, there's a lot of stuff that impacts our sales. It's out of our control. And I don't want to make you feel like it's your fault. It's not your fault. Of course, AI or the economy or whatever is search changes, all that's out of your control. But I don't want you to feel like you should give up or like kind of just like quit TPT or whatever. Just double check with yourself. Are you spending your time poorly? Like I said at the beginning of this episode, definition of it about where you're going to hit that certain point. You cannot continue to increase if other variables remain at a constant. And you need to kind of analyze and say, okay, I've hit this point now and I'm starting to decrease. Like, what's going on here? What can I change? Like, whatever you are doing at this moment right now isn't working. Stop continuing to do it, because that's just crazy. That's insanity. Whatever you're spending your time on, whatever you're spending your money on, like the exact way you're running your business right now, and you're in a decrease, the best thing you can do is to completely change things up. Try something new, try something different, spend your time differently. And I'm not saying that that's going to suddenly, within a week, drastically pull you out of a slump. Like I said, there's all these things out of your control. But if you want to do something, if you want to have some power in your business, some control, if you want to increase your sales, if you want to do something, like if you're still at that point where you haven't given up and you really want to try, make that change the variable. This is not just like, I know sometimes I just ramble and say things that are my opinion, but this is actually like economics. This is not me. This is like expert people who have put this principle together. Like, this is how business works. If the law of diminishing returns is applying to your business, make a change the variables. Something has to change. Anyway, that is the end of my very long pep talk. But my heart does go out to anyone who's experiencing decreases. It's really, really hard. So, I don't want you to feel like there's any blame on you. It's not on you. Especially if it's things like search on TPT has changed and that really screwed things over for you. Of course, my heart breaks for you. But if you aren't ready to give up, yay, that's great. Stay in the game. Just make some changes. See if you can do some things differently. So overall, I want to wrap this up. There are a few ways that we can work to counteract or just try our best to minimize the effects of the law of diminishing returns. So in general, with anything, you focus on quality over quantity. It's like whether that's social media posting or creating products, whatever. Take breaks when you need to, because, burning yourself out, overworking yourself, there's just a point where you keep putting more and more hours in. Say you're working like 30, 40 hours a week on DBD or something, like just putting in more hours probably isn't going to do anything at this point. So, take breaks and take rest. Find more efficient ways of working. Spend your time more wisely. Maybe that's like the Pomodoro method, or like putting your phone away, or giving up on a marketing platform that's not bringing you any money, like using templates, hiring someone, or batching. I don't know. There's a million ways you can change the way you do things, but maybe try something different. Working in general, smarter, not harder, is always really good. And I would just say simply, this is the big one I've been talking about, simply doing things differently, making a change is always the big thing. That's how this, law works. I think the last one I want to mention is just being mindful of your expenses. Analyze where your money is going and whether the ROI is good. So you might not be able to get away with hiring something just because you don't want to do it. Like, I hate Pinterest. I think I'll hire someone for it. Like, if it's not profitable for you, taking it over will save you money. But then, of course, you can be mindful it won't necessarily save you time. So if this is the example of Pinterest, say you're finding Pinterest isn't profitable for you right now, and you look at your expenses, like you can't afford to hire someone for this because that's just going to put you even more in the red. So you do it yourself. But then if you don't know how to use Pinterest and you're spending a lot of time on it, like there becomes a point maybe where you have to ditch it. So that could apply to anything, whether it's social media or email marketing, whatever. Look at where your money and where your traffic's really coming from. Look at your dashboard, look at your traffic section. Make some honest judgments on, okay, I am spending 4 to 5 hours every week writing emails, making Pinterest pins, making social media posts. And then you do the maths of it and you look and you're like, wow, okay, well, it actually turns out I make literally zero money from social media. I get a couple hundred click-throughs from Pinterest and I get $20 from my email. I don't know, you might be like, oh my goodness. And you realize, you work it out, you're like, I'm getting paid 10 cents an hour here. You need to have that honest look at where you're spending your time, because you probably can very easily waste a lot of it marketing and not actually make a lot of money from it. That would be the big thing. Okay, I have rambled on long enough. Like I said, the whole point of this podcast is basically to get you to keep things in mind. Have this in the back of your mind. So anything you are working on in your business, even in your day-to-day life, anything you're spending time on, anything you're spending money on, have a look at it. Have a look at your ROI, but have a look at think of the law of diminishing returns in your mind. Think, have I reached that point where more time or money or effort in this one thing isn't serving me anymore? I either need to change the variables, I need to change things up, or I need to stop doing it, or I need to put my time elsewhere. Analyze it. I think that would be really, really worthwhile. That's my action item for you. Anything you're working on this week, any task you find yourself doing, anything on your to-do list, anything you're about to dedicate your precious time or money to. If you're about to start an ad campaign, you're about to join a membership, or so spending money, or you're about to spend an hour doing something, you're about to set aside a day to do something, just stop for a second and really check, am I going to be spending my time and money wisely on this? Because have a look at your past behavior, your past revenue. Say, well, I've been doing this every week. I've been spending 2 hours a week on blog posts because that's just my routine. It's just what I do. But I need to stop and be like, okay, well, Alex was talking about this law of diminishing returns. Does that apply to my blogging? Let's have a look. I've got 100 blog posts. I just keep churning them out every week. But looking at how much money I'm actually making from blogging, it's really, it's really not worth the 2 hours a week I'm spending. I've hit that point where, keep churning out blog posts. It's just not really doing anything for me anymore. Like, it might be a real wake up call. So be willing to cut things and cut your losses. Be willing to ditch things or hire things out or spend less money or time on them, whatever. I really hope this has helped. I will put a link in the show notes to the waitlist for Secrets for Success, so that when that opens up, you can join if you want to. And the reason is because the program is very much designed around this principle that I've been talking about. And it's like, let's press a pause on the stuff that ain't making you money, like your product creation and stuff. Let's press pause on things like that. And let's actually optimize your listings and get them looking good. So you're spending your time and your energy wisely on things that are actually going to make you money. Pretty cool. Anyway, I will put a link in the show notes, but sorry about this episode getting super, super long. I hope you found it helpful, and I hope you have a terrific day.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Terrific Teacherpreneur. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and review on your preferred podcast listening platform. We really appreciate that effort. Come back for more actionable tips and helpful wisdom in the next episode with your host, Alex. Until then.